So I decided to record something that took my dog by surprise. I decided to record something a little different today, um, partly out of boredom, partly out of why the hell not, but mostly out of boredom. Um, and that is a book review, sort of. I'll get this sort of in just a second. Recently, I haven't read through a lot of books. The last book I read in whole was The Land That Time Forgot by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Before that, I read a chunk of Herodotus's The Histories as research for a screenplay. But recently, because I've been writing so much and I've been working so much and driving between two jobs, I really haven't had time to sit down and read. Um, so I decided to just go back to what I used to do, which was listen to audiobooks. And I used to listen to a lot of audiobooks. It's a habit I picked up from my dad. And I just finished the first one I've listened to in a long time, and that is Catastrophe 1914 Europe Goes to War by Max Hastings. And the title is exactly, and it was read by Simon Vance, who is um, a British person. And obviously, as an American, we like the British accent. And he has a very good accent, his very good voice. Everything's better with a British accent. But sorry, it's been a long day. Been a long day. Um, but yeah, so the title says it all. 1914 Catastrophe 1914. And if you don't know exactly what the catastrophe is of 1914, then because you didn't pay attention in history class in high school or middle school, many fails upon you, and please stop watching the video and potentially unfriend me on Facebook. Um, the title is exactly what it says. It is. So this is a little weird because I've never reviewed a book before beyond saying it's good or it's bad. So this is a new venture for me. Licorice, stop walking between the tripod. My dog, she's down there. I have egg rolls she's trying to get to. Um, but the book is the title tells exactly what the book is. The book is focused exclusively on year one of World War One. World War One is characterized predominantly by the trench warfare that took precedence and became the staple of it until the breakout in late 1917 throughout 1918. But the first year of the war was very mobile. Armies were constantly shifting around. The stagnation didn't really set in until the last month and a half of 1914. So that was about early November is when the trench warfare began to settle in as the belligerents clashed with each other. But this starts obviously with the murder of Archduke Franz Ferdinand by Gabriel Princip, and spends a little bit of time going in about Archduke Franz Ferdinand, his relationship to his to Franz Josef, the Emperor of Austria-Hungary, his relationship to other counts and other members of the Austrian regime, who, much to my surprise, didn't necessarily mourn over his death, but in fact it could have been the fault of the Serbians getting a little too hoity-toity of saying we struck this great victory, which prompted Austria to declare war, and then caused Germany to say we'll support any sort of Austrian intervention into Serbia. And so the book does so the once again it's a little weird for me reviewing an audiobook or a book versus a movie because they're two very different mediums, but the first few chapters are really settled upon the politics, and so that's what this book is. The book is really mixing the politics with the battlefield. What was going through the minds of the various political leaders and the military leaders as they were trying to figure out whose alliance is going to be with whom, how big is their commitment going to be, what is Germany's plan going to be, what's France's plan going to be, what's Serbia's plan going to be, what's Russia's plan going to be. And throughout the first, before I guess in terms of timeline, before the first shots are fired, the book goes pretty much from country to country to country to country, from Germany from Austria-Hungary to Germany, to Russia, to Serbia, to France, and it does reset the clock, as it were. Instead of saying, right, on Monday, this is what everyone did, on Tuesday, this is what everyone did. It basically goes from, Monday on this day to, Friday of the following month, this is what France did. And then it resets to this is what Germany did during the same time. This is what Serbia did during the same time. And that way, it was rather nice. You weren't constantly jumping. I wasn't constantly being jumped around, being having to keep in mind, okay, this is what the French were doing, this is what German, this is what every other group was doing during the same week. You got a whole encapsulation of their mindset at that time. And at the same time, it did also challenge you because you had to remember when you hopped to the other perspective, you had to remember, oh, right, during this time or during this discussion, this was going on in this country with these folks. So in that way, it was as it. There's no way I think to tell a story as complicated as the start of World War One and on something that's as grand. Could just get over here, stay away from my egg rolls. Something as grand as catastrophic as the start of World War One, without in a way losing place and feeling tossed around as much were the leaders during this period. And that's one thing that that watching a lot of, I love documentaries. I love watching the History Channel before they became the Alien and every monster you grew up with is real channel. That a lot of the belligerents back then are portrayed as generally stupid and a bunch of morons. And while it does certainly, the book does certainly say that yes, certainly some of these people weren't exactly the brightest folks in the world. They're no less stupid than politicians today or military commanders today. They're not, they're in a way products of their time, but in the same sense, they are, they're still human, which was a little different than just saying Kaiser Wilhelm was an idiot, the French were idiots, the British Prime Minister was an idiot, Tsar Nicholas was an idiot, Franz Josef was an idiot. They do mention that certain commanders and at certain periods they displayed idiocy, but it doesn't really be a commendation of all of them. When it gets to, so it does spend quite a bit of time with politics leading up to war and during the July crisis as everyone is mobilizing and running around seeing if there's another way around it. When it gets to the actual fighting, actual outbreak of war, it once again reverts to reversing the timeline in each theater of war. That it discusses Austria-Hungary's really botched invasion of Serbia, and then rewinds time as it goes to the German invasion of Belgium, and then the resets time again to the French attacking at Alsace-Lorraine, resets time into the Russians' assaults into East Prussia and Galicia in Poland. So once again, I really like that it gave me a sense of, okay, this is what was happening during this very condensed period in this specific area, and especially like in the Serbian Austria-Hungarian conflict, and in the Russian conflict with Germany, which isn't really discussed that much, I think, here in the United States, or at least taught to American students. So those were very interesting to listen to and to hear about their belligerents, their experiences. I would say in terms of countries involved, Japan does get a bit of a footnote, saying that they went to war with the Allies to seize German holdings in Asia. That's about as much as mentioned Japan gets, and the assaults in Africa, the attacks on colonial bases are once again a footnote because the main focus of this book is about Europe and what was going on in Europe, as that was where the main that's where the war be won or lost. But see, this book does give a nice viewpoint of the battle, of the conflict of the first year. And I would say if you're someone who likes the very nitty gritty details of a certain battle, of saying, first squad of a company of this battalion of this regiment of this division was on this hillock of this ridge of really saying their bullets were. If you like the really down to earth gritty details of each company during the fight, this book is probably not for you, because uh, the author treats the battles in somewhat broad strokes. Sorry, about as detailed as saying, the Coldstream Guards retreated at this, or the 93rd German Guards Division, or this Bavarian unit retreated or advanced or held under artillery fire. So the battles are treated with very, very broad strokes, but this works because I would say a good chunk of the book, what I was listening to, a lot of it is pulled from journals and diaries, newspaper clippings. So a lot of it is excerpts, and he might be discussing the battle, the Battle of Mons, but then you'll hear excerpts from a soldier who is in the middle of it. You'll hear an excerpt from a general. You'll hear an excerpt from a civilian who lived nearby, and that gives it a much more. You're not getting the grittiness of the fight by learning every detail of the movement, but you're getting a much more personal take on it. You're getting a much more, I think, a much better take upon the battle, because it's one thing to describe movements of masses of men punctuated slightly by a journal entry. It's another thing to treat it broadly and so give you that scope of what these conflicts were, and then support that with the experiences of these men who fought and died across France and across Europe. And I really like that. So, once again, that I would say that's my one cautionary about this. If you're interested in picking up, is don't expect every little detail of the battles to be explained away to you. The closest to each battle being explained is, I would say, the Battle of Heligoland Bight, when the British Navy attempted to draw out the German High Seas Fleet into an engagement, and dealing with just two dozen ships. That's about as close as the book got to gritty, nitty, very fine point details. Otherwise, each battle is treated with very broad strokes. Very, once again, the simplest, the most precise it will get is saying a battalion or maybe a company, but it'll get down to that level purely because there's going to be another narrator. There's going to be a journal entry that's going to be brought up. So once again, that's a little difficult. Problems with it, I would say it might just because I was listening to an audiobook, but there were excerpts from French newspapers or German or Austrian or Russian, and it would be French, or instead of saying hello there, you would say, I don't know what hello there is in French, but in German maybe Guten Tag or something like that. And there might be a whole sentence in French, or a whole sentence in Russian, a whole sentence in Serbian. And I would guess in the book there's probably a footnote at the bottom saying here's the translation, but in the audiobook there was not a lot of translations given in that circumstance, which, while in the context of what this untranslated quote was, you can sort of get the feeling of what the author of the quote had, but at the same time, I did sort of lose place of going, okay, so what precisely was the word? I get the general gist based upon what comes before and what comes after, but that middle bit, I'm a little lost on. So I would have liked to have heard saying, French, and then saying translate it means this, or simply just translate all the French or translate all the German, translate all the Slovenian or whatever into English. Because when that did happen, it did break the mood a little bit, because I went, okay, will I get a translation this time? 98% of the time you didn't. For once again, I don't know. I would assume the book itself has a translation at the bottom of the page, as the audiobook doesn't. And so I would consider that the only real gist against the audiobook. Beyond, I would say the only other problem with the audiobook is the way the CDs are kept. I don't know. It's just you can't really see it, but these envelopes they're holding in, which I got that one rather easy. They're just a little annoying to deal with. Um, but beyond that, I'm not going to deal with that right now. But beyond that, no, I thoroughly enjoyed the book. I love history. I love reading nonfiction, and so I was really when I first saw this, I first saw the book and I saw the audio CD. I was like, I really want to kind of pick that up and read it. But I spend all my time driving, or I spend my free time writing. I don't read that much anymore, so it was a perfect thing for me to do was to listen to the audiobook and get through it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I will thoroughly recommend it to anyone if you love reading, if you love history, or if you're interested in this time period, if you're interested in World War One or the early 1900s, and I give it a recommendation. Yeah, that's yeah. Once again, to be honest, I've never reviewed a book before beyond saying it's good or it's bad, so I don't know exactly criteria. I would say it's well balanced. It was really nicely researched. I really did enjoy it. Um, my next, and because I finished it today, obviously, so I went ahead and picked up another book, Forgotten Ally, about China during World War II from 1937 to 1945, with their war against the Japanese as well as their war between the Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong. So I'm looking forward to that, and this is also unabridged. That's good, and it's also read by Simon Vance. So depending on, I guess, what I learned from reviewing this, maybe I'll review this too and sound a little better, like I know what I'm talking about, because a little lost. But so yeah, I hate saying constantly. I don't like it. But otherwise, beyond the small translational problems, um, and the CD slots, Catastrophe 1914 Europe Goes to War, I do recommend it. And I've not read anything else by Max Hastings, but this has definitely made me want to hunt down another one of his books. Hopefully, it'll be an audiobook that I can then pick up and listen to after I finish this next one. So, yeah, otherwise, I really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend if you're a history person, you do like this period, take a listen and or pick it up and read it. Pick up the physical book, or if you're a new tech person, buy it for Nook or Kindle or iPad or whatever you want to do, and hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I did. So, Rick's first book review, sort of, yay!